I'm Ryan. I'm a science teacher.
I'm Cheryl, and I slept through science.
Each episode will tackle a science question you may have learned in school, but can't quite remember or fully explain.
And I'll take the risk of asking the dumb questions so that we can all understand the science we slept through.
The bell has rung. Let's get started. Welcome to lesson 36. We are in our houseplant unit, or should I say Cheryl's houseplants unit. So Cheryl, what question about your houseplants do you have this week?
Well, I thought I would tell you something I learned about my houseplants about a year ago.
Okay, great. What did you learn?
Because, I learned some science about my houseplants.
Ooh, I'm proud.
So, up until about 2 years ago, I kept killing houseplants, and then I finally stopped overwatering them, like we've already talked about.
Yeah, okay.
And then they stayed around, which was very exciting, and they were doing great and growing. And then about a year later, they significantly slowed down how much they were growing. And
Okay.
then some of the leaves started like dying a little bit, not dramatically. So I asked my sister, who knows a lot about plants, what was going on. I was like, what do you think is causing this growth to all of a sudden stop? And they've been doing so well, and I'm watering them the right amount, and they're happy, they have the right amount of light, and then all of a sudden they're just not okay anymore, and I'm not really doing anything differently. And she said, well, they might be root bound. And so I was like, okay, what's that? And she told me that they're doing so well that they're growing more, and they're in a little pot. And so eventually the roots keep growing and growing and growing, and then they run out of soil. And so they just need a bigger pot and more soil. So she said, pull one out of the pot carefully and see if you see a lot of the roots. And I pulled it out, and it was like a little creepy looking. I'll try to share a picture on our Instagram if I can find one, because I did text her a picture. It had so many roots wrapped in circles around the outside of where the pot was. Not the outside of the pot, but like the outer edge of where the plant was inside the pot.
Yeah. The edges perimeter of the soil.
Yes. Yeah. It looked like worms. Like it was so many. It just looked like it was like kind of icky looking. So I was like, well, yeah, I just see a ton of roots. So clearly they are. So I got bigger pots, more soil, repotted them, and they started growing again. So I learned about plants being root bound and how then they need more soil. And that is my story for you today.
Okay. That's a great story.
Thanks.
What question do you have related to this?
Well, I hadn't gotten that far. I just wanted to tell you something cool I knew.
You just wanted to impress me with the story. Okay.
Yeah.
And then can I ask you some questions?
That sounds great.
Okay. And this will be our pre-assessment.
Okay.
Initially, what do you think caused the roots to wrap around and around?
So I think that before they got to that point, they were probably growing out and down.
Okay.
And there's probably space for them to do that in the soil that I planted them in inside of that pot. And then eventually they got as far out and as far down as they could go, but they kept growing. And so they just had to turn a corner and curve around the pot.
Okay. All right. And then you said that this caused some of the leaves to maybe die and the plants weren't growing. When you say they weren't growing, you mean they weren't getting taller? Do you mean they weren't putting out new leaves? What did that look like for a plant to not be growing anymore?
Yeah, both things. A few of them were viney plants, and so they grew one more leaf at a time in a row. And then the next leaf would grow. It was very fun to watch over time. This was also during the pandemics, which like really helped with having houseplants.
Yeah.
And so one leaf would grow, and then once it was like big and full, then it would do another one, and it like kept growing along my windowsill.
Hmm.
And then it just stopped. So it was not producing new leaves.
Oh, okay.
And then some of the existing leaves started turning brown and dying and all
Mm.
that stuff.
But
Yeah.
you knew that that wasn't from over or under watering because you had already fixed that problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think the roots going round and round inside the pot would have a plant stop producing new leaves?
Well, I know that it's because they needed soil
Okay.
and they didn't have enough soil, but I don't know why they need soil other than a place to be so that they don't fall over on the top half.
Okay.
I think I've heard there's nutrients in soil, so I know that's true, but like I don't know what that means. I don't
Yeah.
know, like, but I'm assuming then they didn't get enough nutrients because they didn't have enough soil.
Okay. So you think whatever nutrients are,
Yeah.
because there wasn't enough soil, they couldn't get enough nutrients.
Hmm.
Okay. If you had to make a guess as to what nutrients are or what the nutrients are used for in a plant, what would you guess?
Different minerals or
Okay.
things like that that are in dirt.
Okay.
Because I know like the type of soil matters too, like in different people like care about different amounts of things in there. I don't know. Like people care a lot about soil. Makes a big difference.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that it's like some of the elements of the soil are nutrients.
Okay.
And then I think that, well, we know that we already listed the things plants need. Oh, now you're gonna ask me what they are.
Yes, I
Okay,
am.
so water,
Okay.
oxygen,
Uh-huh.
sun,
Mhm.
and a fourth thing. Is soil the fourth thing?
It's not the fourth thing that
No.
we talked about previously.
No, what's the other thing
It
we
goes
talked
with
about?
oxygen.
Oh yeah, carbon dioxide.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we didn't list soil as one of the things
Mm-mm.
that plants need, but I think they do need it.
Oh, wait, are we missing? Wait, say them again.
Water.
Okay, you did say water. Okay, that was
Yeah.
the first one you said. Sorry,
Yeah,
my
it's all
bad.
good. Um, so I'm wondering if it's similar to how you could eat just pizza all the time.
Which would taste fabulous.
It would, and you would get enough calories,
Mhm.
and you'd get the energy that you need, all those things,
Mhm.
but then you would not be so healthy because you need more nutrition, like high nutrient food
Okay.
than just what's in pizza.
Okay.
I know you're not convinced that you shouldn't just eat pizza, but
Yeah, I, I think what we're actually getting at a deeper level here is what are nutrients? Because even the
yeah,
way you're talking about it with people as
yeah,
the analogy, which that's a great connection to, and pizza, great. Who doesn't love pizza? Well,
yeah.
there are definitely people who don't love pizza, and then there's some people who do and can't eat it, which is unfortunate. But could you even, this is a totally different question for a totally different lesson, but could you live just pizza on just pizza?
I don't think you'd live a very good life,
Sure.
though. Like your doctor would get concerned about you. You might have some
Absolutely.
deficiencies. So then that's what
Mhm.
makes me think it's like the plant is like it's getting the sun it needs, it's getting
Uh-huh.
the water it
Okay.
needs, all those four things we listed. And yet, if it's not getting the nutrients from the soil it needs, then is that why it's dying? Or is it just that it needs space in soil? Like, is
Mhm.
it crowded and that's why it's dying? Or is it
Okay.
both? So the question's like,
Mhm.
what aspect of being root bound is killing my plant?
Yeah. What actually about that is, well, and is it killing your plant or is it just making it unhealthy. Does it
Oh,
eventually kill a plant? Could it kill a plant? What do
I
you
would
think?
guess if I keep watering it,
Yeah, and giving it sunlight.
I don't know. I think eventually, if it keeps dropping leaves, eventually it's gonna die because it doesn't have enough leaves to
Mhm.
so so like yeah, I think eventually it would die. I think it would take a lot longer than other things I could do to kill plants that I've done in the past.
It's like the long drawn out killing of the
Yes. Yeah,
plants.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. Okay. And any ideas what the plants actually use nutrients for?
To be healthy.
Anything beyond that?
Um, strength, maybe to absorb things better. These are guesses.
Yeah.
Um, maybe it helps them absorb the sunlight better or
Hmm.
to be more, I don't know. Those are my guesses.
Okay. Those are great guesses, and we can definitely build on those.
Okay, but before you jump into your lesson, get all
Yes.
teachery or whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah, I know. I
Um,
tend to do that.
I wanted to actually show you the picture of my root bound plant because I think it's really interesting.
Okay, and you found it.
Yes, I found the picture. So here it is.
Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, and I could definitely even see like the circle, especially like about 3/4 of the way down from the top of the soil. It looks like almost a perfect ring around the
Yes.
outside of where the soil is. So what I'm looking at is it's definitely one of those viney plants. I don't know what type of plant that is. Do you know the name of that plant?
Well, it's one that has green leaves and is viney and is in my windowsill.
Great. Uh-huh. I feel like it's a pretty common houseplant, viney houseplant thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, like you can see those leaves from kind of underneath, and Cheryl's clearly pulled this up out of the pot and then turned it over on its side. So we're kind of looking at a cross section, and you can definitely see some soil in there, but then there's a big, huge mass of really kind of brown roots that definitely look, some of them look like they're kind of every which way, but then as you get deeper they start to look more and more spiral and round, and almost like the bottom it's almost like really thin noodles that have been
Yeah.
like wrapped around over and over again.
Yeah, it looks like some angel hair pasta or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, just brown in color instead of
Yeah.
pasta color.
I mean, it's not right. Like you're like, "Oh, that's not what that's supposed to do."
Yeah, yeah. Based on what you have shared and the ideas that you had, we're going to see if we can put together an explanation. First thing you talked about was the roots tend to grow down and out, and generally that's true. There's actually two different categories of root systems, and one of them mostly grows down and the other one mostly grows out, but they both do both things. So yes, roots grow down and they grow out.
Okay.
So that's true. And then when they run into space, you're right, they don't have an option. So they kind of just turn to where they can still grow.
Yeah.
So all of that totally makes sense, on the right track. The second thing was getting a little bit deeper as to why does that cause a plant to grow less, to stop growing, to start losing leaves, and what's going on there.
Yeah.
And you said, well, it needs the soil. And that's true. And there are actually two reasons, or you could argue that it's the same reason, but I think for our discussion, we're going to separate them into two things that the soil ends up providing for the plants. And the first one is actually one that you mentioned that the plant needs, but you didn't connect to the soil, and that's water. Water helps
Oh.
hold on, or the soil helps hold on to that water so that the roots
Mm,
have enough time to absorb the water.
yeah.
As the roots take up more space and kind of push the soil out of the way, that's the whole plant that's in the pot is able to hold on to the water less. So the water tends to run through more quickly. And then even though you are watering it, the plant can't get the water as easily.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
And so,
Absolutely.
so that leads to underwatering, even if you are technically pouring the right amount of water in, or conversely, for the bottom part of the roots, overwatering, if the water is just sitting at the bottom of the pot. And we talked about that in a previous lesson, that both of those things are bad.
Yeah.
And do you remember why, or the main reason why?
Um, well, the main reason is that it doesn't get water to the rest of the plant, because if it's overwatering, then it is drowning the plant.
Mhm.
Oh, oxygen. That's the main reason. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can't get the oxygen. You're right. But so
Yeah.
you got yourself there. Yeah. And then when it doesn't have enough oxygen, it doesn't have enough energy to absorb the water either.
Yeah.
So you were right. It is the water, but the lack of oxygen is a big part of that. That kind
Mhm.
of so obviously that's a part of it, right? Is if the soil isn't there because it's been pushed out of the way by the roots, then the roots can't absorb any of the water, causes issues. So that's number one. The second one you talked about was nutrients. And this
Mhm.
is why I said technically it's all one, because you can make an argument that water is a nutrient,
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
right? Typically, when we talk about nutrients, we talk about them differently from water, but you need the hydrogen and the oxygen, right? H2O from water to do a lot of the things, which is kind of what a nutrient is. So
Mm.
it's in a big sense, it's the same, but we typically talk about it in two separate parts, and you were talking about them separately. So that's why I've separated those out. There's a lot of nutrients that plants need, and you try to kind of think of like, what did you think they were? You thought maybe minerals, things that are in the dirt, and if they don't get enough of them, it can cause a problem.
Mhm.
There are three main nutrients that plants need, and they're all things that you have heard of before. Any
Okay.
guesses on what they are?
Oh, once I hear them, I'm gonna be like, well, of course.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. And I don't know. Iron. That's my guess.
Okay. That is one of what they call a trace nutrient, which
Oh,
means
okay.
plants do need iron. They just need it in a very, very small amount. So it's
Oh,
not one
okay.
of the big three,
Fair.
but it is one that they need. So see, you've got stuff. Nitrogen.
Yeah. 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 Checks out. I've even heard of that being in soil. So that
Yep.
makes sense. Yeah.
Phosphorus.
Oh, they need glow in the dark stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Because that's the only thing phosphorus does. And potassium,
Okay.
which are all things that we as humans need too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to give my plants some bananas, cook for them in a cast iron skillet,
Uh-huh.
give
Yep.
them, sprinkle some little glow in the dark stars
Yep. That's
in the
it.
soil. Okay,
That's
great.
what they need. Yeah. No, so they need those things to make molecules, to break things down, to do the different processes. So let me give you a couple of examples. The nitrogen is one of the big components in proteins.
Okay.
Maybe you've heard of proteins before,
Yes, sure have.
right? And proteins are kind of a big deal. And
Yeah.
in chlorophyll. Do you remember what
Oh,
chlorophyll does?
that's what absorbs the sunlight,
Yes, as a part of photosynthesis.
and it's green.
And it's green. And that's the main function of the leaves. If they're not getting enough of those nutrients from the soil, they can't do photosynthesis. So the leaves start to turn yellow because the chlorophyll is breaking down, kind of like we've talked about before.
Mm.
Making sense?
Hmm.
Okay. Phosphorus is an element that is used, a big thing in energy. We talked about being able to have enough energy in order to move things around in the plant. And phosphorus is part of the molecule. It's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Phosphorus is one of the elements that you need in order to have those energy molecules be able to move around the plant.
Okay.
Okay, so that helps with energy. And then potassium, it helps again with lots of things, but with water regulation. So being able to take water
Oh,
in and out and figure out how much a cell needs and all of those things. Again, these are important to the
yeah.
plant. And the roots are the things that absorb those, oftentimes through the water. If those elements get dissolved in the water through the soil and then absorbed in through the roots. So it's all interconnected, right? And so if the roots don't have access to those things, then the plant doesn't have access to them, and then it can't do those processes that it needs to. And so especially like your plant is your example. In the picture, I could see there was still a fair amount of soil, especially up at the top. And that's why I would guess that's why it just stopped its growth. It reached the limit. It could gather a certain amount of nutrients from the soil that were there, certain amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, but it couldn't gather enough to have the energy and the materials to continue to build more plant. So it kind of just stunted its growth, if you will.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then you talked about what you said, some of your ideas for what the nutrients would be used for. And you said absorbing light better.
The protein helps with the chlorophyll.
The nitrogen helps with the,
yes.
Yes. And nitrogen's also in proteins. Yes.
Yes.
So see, you were on the right track there.
Okay, great.
Right. So absorbing light. And you said strength. I don't know that that's quite true, and I don't know that you even knew quite what you meant by strength.
Nope, I was just thinking of aspects of plants.
Yep, which is totally fine. Actually, a big part of, if you think of like a plant that's wilted or not, is the amount of water that's in it. So if it doesn't absorb enough water, and you could argue that that's strength, right? That then that would hold it up better. Some of it is just structural, though, as it makes the cells and things. Like wood is obviously structural. So when you have a larger plant that ends up being woody, that's a structural support. So there you go.
That's so cool.
And now it's time for your quiz, Cheryl.
Oh, but see, I already gave you so many facts at the beginning of this lesson that it's more like I taught you a lesson. So I feel like we're even. Yeah.
I thought you told me a story.
Oh.
And that's more like English class than science class.
Yikes.
Right?
Fine.
Okay. Well, the first one you have already answered once. I'm just making sure that it's sticking in your head. So that's why I'm asking it again.
Okay.
What are the things that plants need to grow and live?
Water, sun, oxygen, carbon dioxide.
There we go. Nice job. What are the two things that plants have trouble getting when they are root bound?
Water and nutrients.
There you go. See, you're on a roll.
Yay.
Okay. How does being root bound make water hard to get?
Because the soil holds the water so that the roots can absorb it over time, because they don't like chug the water. It's more like a sponge situation, maybe.
Oh, nice. Yes, the roots are not chugging the water. That is a good mental image, I think, that I have for myself. That's
totally.
great.
Yeah, they're not doing shots or anything. So,
no, definitely not. No. And the last question: give examples of important nutrients for plants and why they are important.
Nitrogen.
Okay.
Is important because it's like a protein, and it also helps the plant have chlorophyll, which is what it needs to absorb sunlight.
Okay. One little tweak: nitrogen isn't a protein.
Oh.
It's used in proteins.
Oh, it's an ingredient in protein?
Yep. Nitrogen is an atom, and a protein is a molecule. Proteins are very large molecules, in fact. Yeah, but nitrogen is in proteins.
Cool. Okay. Got it.
Did you have another example, or is that your example?
I have more examples.
Oh, okay.
I think. I said it and now I'm scared I don't. Well, it's also phosphorus, which helps the whole plant get energy.
Yes. Good connection. Yes.
and then potassium, which helps
Mhm.
it regulate the amount of water
Mhm.
it's getting.
Yeah, see? You have all of the examples.
Yay.
Nice job. One more thing just to add is when you fertilize a plant,
Yeah.
fertilizer is usually nitrogen and potassium. Sorry, nitrogen and phosphorus, and sometimes some potassium. Like that's what fertilizer is adding those nutrients to the soil.
Cool.
So when the plants have access to more of it, they can do more plant things.
Nice.
And so that's what you're doing when you're fertilizing plants.
That's so cool.
Yeah, there you go. I think this was a great question that came out of a wonderful story that you told us, Cheryl.
Thanks.
Are you feeling like you're understanding your houseplants a little bit better as we go?
I am. It's really fun.
Wonderful. That's all the time that we have for our lesson today. So why don't you pack up your stuff and get ready for my closing remarks. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at I Slept Through Science or on Twitter at Slept Science.
If you have dumb science questions like I do, please send them to us. You can email us at isleptthroughscience@gmail.com, or you can even send us a voice memo and we'll play it on the podcast.
Please rate and review our podcast to tell other people what you think about it, subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode, and share about our podcast on social media.
Thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. Okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
The bell doesn't dismiss you. I dismiss you.